All right, here's our week 6 update. Beginning of May, we've been at it about 5 weeks so far and really having a great time. Sunday night, we had moved the boat over to Beaufort so that on Monday morning we could go in and have a little exploring of the town before we set out for the afternoon. So we walked around and we asked the locals just to be positive, and in North Carolina, the town is called Beaufort, not to be confused with Beaufort, South Carolina. Same spelling, different pronunciation, but now that I've spoken to locals, I know the skinny.
We tried to go in to anchor there, but we went in and the inn was full. This is the problem is you plan on moving, but there were a bunch of boats in there. We ended up having to anchor outside of the little harbor, but it was good.
And it wasn't too far of a dinghy ride.
No, we didn't get any 5 o'clock wake-ups, rocking or anything like that. Yeah, there was an easy dinghy ride in.
And we explored just a little bit around town. We went into the old cemetery that's been there since the 1700s. There are British soldiers there, American soldiers there, Civil War soldiers there. So it's kind of a all-encompassing thing. It was kind of cool to read some of the stories about
the girl
people
who was in the room.
A little girl was buried in a rum barrel. They were originally from London. They were living in South Carolina, and she wanted to go see London, I guess. And so her dad promised that he would make sure to bring her home. And of course, then she died on the way home. And instead of throwing her body overboard, he bought a rum barrel from the captain and put the body in it so that he could fulfill his wish to his wife, which was to bring his daughter home. But it was cute because the town's kids put a bunch of toys. There's toys all over her grave.
That's probably the interesting thing about it is it's still a thing there.
And they still honor her and remember her memory, which is kind of cool.
There was some restaurant called a general store, but we didn't get to go in. So we went early, and we really just wanted to get going to get to the next place. So we just got a taste.
We saw some pretty old houses that, just walking around seeing the houses that were built. So that was cute.
But it was pretty.
Yeah.
We went and headed up the river. It was very windy and kind of marshy. So it was interesting. It was a little different than what we had seen.
And we were heading towards the very, very beginning, I guess, of the Outer Banks before we kind of got to it. We anchored near a place called Cedar Point and spent the night really just to anchor and wait because we were going to get up in the morning and head to Ocracoke. And we had appetizers and little cocktail hour and just sat outside, and it was peaceful and really got to enjoy the scenery and watching the evening. So that was a fun evening.
Yeah, it was just right off of the channel. When I woke up in the middle of the night, I guess we had switched directions or whatever because of the tides. I looked out and I could not make out where we were. The lights were very strange. It turned out there was a barge coming right at us. It's so close to the channel that coming down the channel, it just looked like this strange light. It really shows you at night how it's really hard to figure out where you are. But we had a chart and we were in the right place.
And then we headed out the next morning and sailed some of the way because, boy, in the beginning of the day, we thought the wind was crazy howling when I was just motoring us out of where we had anchored. We were worried. It was blowing
the day
crazy.
Started over 20 knots. It did calm down, and then it ended at 20.
Right, but when we put the sails out, we reefed because we thought it's going to be blowing crazy, and then we opened them all the way up. Then we took them down and motored because I think we had no wind for a little while.
It was a little sporadic, but by the end of the day, when we were coming into Ocracoke, it was blowing hard. We were trying to come into the inlet. Right at the beginning of the inlet, there's a very shallow area, so we pulled the sails down, go through that. But the waves were so bad, which you don't think about in the Outer Banks. You think, oh well, maybe we're not in the ocean. The waves aren't going to be. They were bad. Coming in, we were hitting bottom because of the waves. Just a couple times we touched. I'm like, oh no, this is not a great place.
That was also the long day of horseflies and blackflies.
Oh, yeah.
So we were in more clothes than normal. In fact, you were in long pants and socks, which is unusual.
Well, why did I put long pants and socks on?
Because the flies were biting.
Yes, they were biting us. Yeah. We had horseflies first, so I got an old license plate and was swatting them, and I was good at killing them. We had dead horseflies everywhere. That didn't bother me too bad. But then the black flies came, and we're out. You could not see land. And
I don't know where these flies came from.
Where did they come from? We don't know. But they came, and if you went down below, there were flies over all the upholstery, all over. We just couldn't kill them, and they bite. They're like little house flies, and they would bite. So I put socks on and long pants, and they still bit through it.
But then, of course, coming in the channel, heading into the little harbor by Ocracoke, right when we turned to go in and had to go really slow because it's really shallow, we're paying attention, the skies opened up and it was a downpour.
Oh, yeah.
So we're soaking wet in more clothes than we normally would have been in. He's in socks and long pants when we finally did
we were
turn
soaked.
into the channel and anchor. But we anchored and it was so calm and beautiful. What an adorable little harbor. And soon after we anchored and got out of the wet clothes, the sun came out and it was beautiful.
That was a really good anchorage.
It was a great anchorage, yeah. So we dinghied in and decided let's go to dinner because we had survived the crazy of the rain and the flies and all the day. So we went to a place called Daggio, which was really nice. It was still kind of wet in the evening. It would have been nice to sit outside. They had this cute little couches and pretty area, but we sat on this covered porch, which was nice. We were inside outside. They had some good vegetarian options, which we were surprised. We're in a small seafood town. You never know what we might find, but they really had a couple of
cauliflower steaks
and some fancy veggies. It looked like a
meal.
It was really, really nice to have a nice dinner.
It's rare.
And then the next day we were going to wake up and it was supposed to be a work day for you.
I went to do my time card or log in. I was trying to log in. I couldn't, and for days. And finally I called IT and they said, oh, well, that's because you don't work here. So they had locked me out of my computer. I was like, oh no. And actually my corporate computer, I can't get in ever again until the end of this trip. My normal work computer still worked. Basically, they weren't going to pay me because I was on leave. So I said, well, let's go
on a hike.
Yeah, let's not work.
They messed up between leave of absence and part-time status. And
just a snafu.
It's fixed.
Yeah, it's
now,
fixed. It was just a couple.
That day.
Yeah.
So we decided to go into town and explore. So that was fun because we went into Ocracoke. We walked to the lighthouse,
the
a
Blackbeard,
preserve where Blackbeard died. Edward Teach, I learned his name was. I never knew that before. It was a whole preserve and really pretty trees. And we were down at the water.
We checked out a pub.
Went to Howard's Pub. And then we also went and got some groceries. We went to the
fly swatter
hardware store.
I have this fly swatter's green. I call it the Green Goblin, and it works. Those flies are terrified of it.
We've killed quite a few, and there are no flies at the moment, so that's a blessing. We walked all around, and then we went back out to the boat for dinner. So we stayed in Ocracoke Harbor, and Thursday things got settled with your work, and you were able to work. So you worked, and I did some projects. I was actually sewing these little elastic things on these bags that hang on the wall. They were just gaping open too much, and I wanted to fix them. So I got some big buttons, and I did this little elastic loop. Nothing major, but it was fun. It works really well, and it looked good. So
boat project.
Yeah, it was a fun boat project. So that was Thursday, and then there was a really pretty sunset that night in the little Ocracoke Harbor. And we were planning to stay the next day, and you were going to work again. You got up early
because
Friday.
it was supposed to rain. A storm was blowing.
We should have listened.
Yeah.
But when we got up Friday morning, it looked beautiful. So we thought, all right, we're going to go on the long.
And we looked at it, it said light rain. And we're like, we don't care about light rain.
Right, because we're under the Bimini and we have raincoats. And so we decided to go. Maybe things were telling us probably not to go because when I went to start the engine, the key just wouldn't even turn. The ignition switch was all very, very loose. So we had to not leave.
Yeah, we had to tear the back out and rewire the ignition switch.
But it didn't. It
took an hour. So we didn't leave until 9 instead of 8. Probably 8 would have been a lot nicer.
At the end of the day. Yeah. We sailed some.
No, we sailed. We were sailing. It was the best one we've had, really, as far as direction and everything. We were sailing over 10 knots, which for us is incredible. Yeah. Because we're surfing down waves. The waves were incredible. We were moving right along.
But around 2 or I guess 3, we thought we might make it to Roanoke. We might make it to Manteo. So I got on Dakwa and tried to reserve a slip because we weren't sure where we were going to anchor that night since we had no plan to even leave that morning. So the first place I tried to reserve, unfortunately, they responded pretty quickly and said they had no openings. And then there was a second place, but from the charts that you were reading looked way too shallow to go in, and I didn't try that one. We probably, in hindsight, should have because that might have been the best one. But then I reached out to this place. I had called them first in Manteo and left a message saying, we want to reserve a slip, but we are worried it's shallow. Can you please get back to us? This is our draft, blah, blah, blah. We never heard anything. So then I put it in on Dakwa before they closed, but I guess it was too close to closing for them. So they never even responded. They canceled the request the next morning, which by then we obviously knew we didn't have a slip, which meant we had to keep going. And the unfortunate thing about it is it was so cold.
It was kind of funny because I had found like a dump off anchor location that was before the storm. And I said, okay, here's our last chance. We need to either anchor here
I
or
wanted to
we
go
need to
walk
press
around
through.
those towns.
And you were like, no, I want to go. I was like, all right, well, because it's going to rain. And she's like, we can handle rain, which you did.
It was blinding rain.
No, it was
at our
crazy.
face.
It was
I
crazy.
didn't have glasses on because it was almost night at this point, and it's pelting my eyeballs. So I had the hood and then a scarf. It was raining. We were both shivering.
Oh, we
You
were.
finally
I
did
was
come
actually
down
cold,
and put more clothes on to stay back up. But we were also in very shallow water, so I'm having to hold the phone with our other display because it has a different app to see depths. I'm literally, my hand, I couldn't do it anymore. My hands are shaking so bad. And we passed Roanoke, we passed Manteo, and now we're sailing.
She said, well, where are we anchoring? I said, well, it's still another hour. Like, an hour?
I couldn't do it.
Yeah, you would kind of
I came down and I made hot cocoa and coffee. I made you coffee. I made hot
But
chocolate
it was
for me.
deep enough by then. It was no problem to do it by myself.
You didn't need the other person watching.
No,
depth.
but there was part of it that was really shallow. We have a 6-foot draft, and it was very close.
My fingers were numb. I was thinking back to the morning when the ignition switch didn't work and thought, we were not supposed to leave today. But in the end, we finally anchored like at 8:15, and that is probably our latest day of anchoring because we try to get in way before sunset. It was right about sunsets around here at 8:05. So it was
still bright enough.
We put the anchor down. We took hot showers because luckily the motor had been running all afternoon, and it felt so good. I just stood in there to thaw my fingers and toes because it was really, really cold. When we were looking at where we were, I realized, oh my gosh, we are actually so close to the Wright Brothers Monument, which I thought was actually in Kitty Hawk, but it's about 4 miles south. And when we were first looking at the options, I looked at ferries from Manteo. We couldn't get to Kitty Hawk. I think we had decided.
Yeah, we didn't know how to get there.
We were going to miss it. And it was one of the things I really wanted to see, so I was a little disappointed. But when we anchored finally and I was reading the map, okay, where did we end up when we didn't go to Manteo?
Like, we're so close, but there was no way in.
We weren't even on an island that was inhabited. So I thought, well, I don't know, we're close, but we're not that close. That was Friday night. Saturday was a work day.
No, in the very early morning, I was like, oh no, I got to figure this out. It's so close. I was trying to find a way to shore and thinking, well, maybe we can walk through the woods or whatever. Well, I found this national preserve that had a trail that ran down to a beach. And they said, oh, there's a little beach down there. So I thought, we'll move anchor. We couldn't get close enough because it's so shallow, but we could dinghy about a mile to the beach and then walk a few miles through the preserve. Then I was thinking, we'll call an Uber, go to the town.
And we did look, and luckily, I mean, it's an actual town, Devil Hills. And so we actually tried to reserve an Uber that morning to see if it would even work for the next day. And there were Ubers. So we were like, okay, so now we had a plan. So then you were able to focus on work. You worked all day Saturday.
Yeah.
I watched the FSU softball game, which unfortunately they lost to Duke. But now we're going to go to the regionals, so hopefully we'll do well in that. And we relaxed after that long day of sailing and cold night. Mm-hmm. I was happy to just do nothing all day, really, Saturday. Once we had the plan in place for Sunday, we set out to do it. And when we started to put the dinghy in on the water, it was so choppy. And I thought, we don't have to go.
It didn't feel like we probably should do it.
No, it did not. It definitely did not.
It was way too wavy.
And it was blowing, and we thought it's going to be blowing worse coming home.
I thought the wind would pick up, but we practiced coming against it, and then we could go find...
Yeah, before we left too far from the boat, he drove away into the wind, and the motor holds and does it. So we were like, all right, let's go for it.
So we assumed we'd be soaked getting to shore, and maybe we were. I
had on the raincoat, I had rolled my pants up, and I had the hood on, so my legs were wet, but my clothes were pretty dry. Got to shore, we pulled the dinghy up pretty high, and were able to secure it. We had our shoes and socks in a Ziploc bag, put those on, and went on the hike. The plan worked beautifully. So
it was a nice hike, too.
The only bad part was in the morning we had to cut off Sarah from our normal chat because we had to start this plan if we were going to do the whole day because we were going to keep motoring later in the afternoon, right?
Yeah, there was one problem. We get up to the visitor station at the preserve and there's no cell service. So we had to walk down the road a ways.
We could get cell service on the boat to order the Uber, but once we got to the end of the trail in the parking lot, we couldn't get any cell coverage to call the Uber.
So we're like, all right, let's walk towards town.
Because it was a mile point something to walk all the way to the monument.
Oh, I think it was more because we didn't realize we could go in the back way. We thought we had to go several miles around. Turns out you could go in the back. We probably could have walked it, no problem, but we were exhausted.
So we did get an Uber. We went went to the monument. When we very first got there, it looked like the skies were going to open up any second. So we were like, all right, let's go up and have a look at it if that's all we get. But really, we were up there reading some signs and taking fun pictures and sending Julia a happy birthday video. And it cleared up. It got pretty out. It was
beautiful.
like from the time we took the pictures at the top to when we came back down and took some further away. It was sunny. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful day. So we got to explore all the grounds. There's a spot where it looks like a mock of what the flight would have looked like with their friends standing around and the photographer. It's like a whole statue thing. And then we walked all the way to the museum. Really read a lot of stuff about the Wright brothers. Really fun afternoon. I enjoyed it.
Be ready to walk, though.
It is a lot of walking.
It's a lot, but it's fun.
You can drive. The people who have cars, you can actually do the museum and then drive your car over to where the monument is.
I see.
And then I saw several people say, we're going to drive over to where the... Well, we don't have that option. So then we had to do the plan backwards. So we had to get another Uber back to the
Hope
preserve.
the dinghy's there.
Keep our fingers crossed. The only downside of the whole thing is you left your green shirt in the Uber.
Yeah, and I needed it because we only have a couple shirts that are warm.
Warm, yeah.
And
so
that was one of them.
We'll be on a search to find a new one. I'll replace it. I'll find something. Yeah.
Luckily, though, the wind had shifted directions. The waves had knocked down quite a bit. And when we went back...
Oh, yeah. It was such a calm
Yeah,
ride.
it was a lot. It wasn't bad at all.
We were not soaking wet.
So.
There were some people out there just sitting on a bench kind of enjoying the view, and they were intrigued at us. They said, oh, this is your dinghy, and oh, where are you going? And then they see the boat out in the middle of the channel or harbor, or I don't know, Anchorage. Yeah. They said they were going to Maine, and they predicted to be there in a week. And I said, oh, yeah, we'll be there in July.
They had a car.
Different journey, different excitement. So then we made it back to the boat. I got to talk to Jordan and Nicole and Sarah and my mom. You talked to your mom. So that was how we spent Mother's Day.
We wanted to move the boat. You have a choice. You can go the Dismal Swamp or the Virginia Cut. So we chose the Virginia
Cut. Just by
Cut.
the sound.
Yeah, like I don't need to really look that hard at this one. But actually, there's reasons why we chose it. And
but people say the Dismal Swamp is beautiful if you're not as deep.
Yeah, if you have a shallow draft.
But we chose Virginia Cut. So we wanted to get a little further north.
Yeah.
So we went about 20 miles up.
Yeah, we just anchored like right at the beginning of the Virginia Cut. That was actually pretty rough water. We were just motoring, but the wind had really picked up the wrong direction for us. You know, we're heading into it, but the waves were knocking us a bit. But when we got there, it was a beautiful anchorage right by Buck Island.
So we anchored, and that's when we talked to my mom and your mom. That's right.
Yep.
So that's how we ended Mother's Day, and that's how we ended week 6. And we are excited for Virginia and Chesapeake Bay and all the things that come next.
We got a long river up to Norfolk is next.
Yep. Hopefully we'll start seeing some people when we get the opportunity to get closer to some cities. Bye.